Hi, everyone, and welcome to this brief mini training webinar, whatever you want to call it. I never know what the right word is. But thank you very much for being here, for listening to this recording. I know how busy everything is. I know I've recorded this over the May bank holiday weekend. So whenever you catch it, whenever you're listening to it, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen in. And what I want to talk about today is something I've been seeing more and more, especially this year, but for years as well, in the work that I'm doing with lawyers, and particularly senior lawyers and leaders in law firms. And that's not burnout in the very obvious sense. I know that's what I'm known for and I talk about a lot. And it's not people who are unable to function or who are visibly completely overwhelmed, but something that's much quieter than that, much more insidious, if you like. It's those people that are doing really well on paper. They're delivering, they're reliable, they're holding everything together, but underneath they're starting to feel as though things are getting harder, things are heavier and more challenging than they used to feel. And the reason I want to talk about this, and it seems to be resonating with so many people, is that it's often gone unnoticed for a really long period of time. And that's not because it isn't there, but it's because it doesn't look like what we expect it to look like. It doesn't look like what we expect a problem with someone's stress levels or their mental health, for example, to look at. So if we don't know each other very well, then just very briefly, for those I haven't met, I've spent 20 plus years working as a lawyer, and for the last 10 years have also worked with senior lawyers and law firms, particularly around performance, well-being, high stress levels, burnout, and now talking a lot about sustainability. How do we have sustainable, hopefully long and enjoyable careers in the legal profession? And what's really super clear to me at the moment is that many of the challenges we are facing around our energy, around our boundaries, even motivation, our stress levels, and our likelihoods of burnout are easily missed or ignored for a really long period of time, until sometimes it's a bit too late to start trying to pull it back again. And these issues often start at a very human level, and often in ways that are very easy to miss. So I want us to start with the idea that we can be extremely high performing, and on the face of it, we're doing everything right. We're perhaps the highest performers, the highest achievers. We're very well thought of amongst our peers and amongst our teams. We are on paper very successful, but we can still be under quite a lot of strain, whether we realize it ourselves or not. So I just want to say, before we dive into this a bit deeper, is that today is not about trying to diagnose anything. I am not medically trained, despite my 10 years of experience trying to learn as much as I can about this. We're not labeling people's experiences, and we're also not about lowering standards. It's about understanding what might be sitting underneath this high performance, this drive for success, if you like, so that it becomes something that is much more sustainable, and not something that is quietly costing us more and more over time, and is possibly not something that we're going to be able to keep continuing to do at the same pace as maybe we have been doing. So I'm going to share some of what I'm seeing, what I've seen in myself 10 years ago, and what I'm seeing with lots of lawyers and firms that I'm working with, and give you a way of thinking about it, and hopefully a few points that you can take away with you. And as we go through, just take what resonates with you, take what makes sense to you and feels like it might be true for you. You don't need to agree with all of it. It may not all apply to you. But if something makes you pause and think, that's usually where there's something in there that's going to be really useful for you. And I just want to add this here as well, being fairly now educated in matters of the nervous system and our stress system. I want to add this, that some of what I mention might be a bit uncomfortable, or even more than a bit uncomfortable. So be gentle. I guess this is what people would call a trigger warning in social media. Be gentle with yourself. If there's something here that really is a little bit close to the bone, a little bit hard to hear, you can pause it. You can come back to it later if that's what you need to do. If you can sort of sit with us, and keep listening, just do some simple things like put your feet on the floor. Take that deep breath in, and you might think, oh my goodness, Hannah, we're really bright, clever lawyers. You don't need to tell us to breathe. But do you know the science behind this? You take the breath in, hold it for a second or two, then exhale, make the exhale a little bit longer than the inhale. You are physically reducing your stress levels when you do that. When the exhale is longer than the inhale, it has a physical impact on the body and physically reduces our stress levels. So that's one thing. If something feels a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit emotional, a little bit too difficult, then feet on the floor, maybe even look around the room. It's about reminding ourselves that we are right here in this moment. Okay, I hope that makes sense. That will make sense to some people, depending on what they hear when we talk about things today. But this is just about thinking about things a little bit differently, maybe noticing one or two things about yourself that either you haven't noticed before, or maybe they've been nagging at you. It's been there, but you've just not perhaps thought about it particularly. So what we're going to have a look at today, the hidden layers behind high performance. High performance sounds brilliant. It's fantastic. It's what we all did to get us into this sort of career and to get us achieving what we have achieved. But how do we keep it going? There's a great book. I haven't read it, but I love to quote it. What got us here won't get us there. So that high performance, all of those traits got us exactly where we are, and that is fantastic. But my question is always, can we keep going at that pace and in the same way that we have always done things? Can we keep that going for another 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Can we physically do it? And I guess the second question is, do we want to keep doing it that way? I don't know. Those are a couple of questions to maybe think about. I know when I looked at this 10 years ago, the answer was hell no, which is why I changed so many things, learned about all these things I talk about, and now try to share it with as many legal professionals as possible. That's my career's job now. We also want to recognize some of the early signs before that impact shows. If I'm honest, that impact is probably already showing. If I were to have a conversation with you, I would probably be able to pick up some of these signs, either in your voice, either in, if we're on video or in person, how you're coming across, and in some of the things you're saying. Once we are under quite high stress levels and we are starting to feel quite overwhelmed, it shows in our language, it shows in our sort of fixed mindset approach to things, very black and white, very this is possible, this is not possible. All these sorts of things and mindsets are a stress reaction very, very often. So I could probably start to tell if there are some of those early signs. There may be signs that you see in yourself. There may be things that you are not seeing yet because they creep in very slowly, but then the impact can be quite big and actually appear quite quickly as well. So we want to have a bit of a rethink about boundaries. I know that really resonated with a lot of people when I spoke about that recently. Boundaries, the amount of pressure that we probably put ourselves under, never mind what other people might be putting on us. Often we are our own worst enemies, and it's the pressure we put on ourselves. Our energy levels, because the lower our energy levels, the higher our stress, because we're not able to do the things that we would normally do to keep our stress levels lower. So energy, stress, burnout, all very, very intrinsically linked. And then this idea of sustainability. Don't we talk about sustainability all the time, of the planet, of, plastics and food sources and all this sort of thing? How often do we think about ourselves as human beings, and how sustainable is our life, is our work, is what we're doing? Is this long-termly sustainable? That is not a phrase, but I'm going to use it. In the long term, how sustainable are we as human beings? And that's something we very, very rarely think about, or certainly not enough. So I want to come back to this idea that we can still be high performing. This is not about saying, let's just all lower our standards, because we've got such high stress levels in the legal profession, such crazy levels of burnout that we're already seeing. And believe me, they are in the pipeline. We have not seen the worst of it. We are going to see a lot more. It's not about saying, well, then let's just all lower our expectations. It's about how can we still be high performing arguably even better once we take some of these things into account, but be able to sustain it under the pressure that we might work under, the volume that we might work under, the things that go on in life that we need to deal with. How do we keep that going in a possible and a sustainable way? So what we do see, and what I'm seeing a lot of, is that people are doing very well on paper. I was 10, 11 years ago. Very well on paper, the most successful I'd ever been, more successful than I ever thought I was going to be. But what is it costing? What's going on underneath that is already starting to show signs of strain, or that this is not going to be possible in the long term? That's what we want to be starting to have a look at before it goes too far. So there's a question here for you to just have a very quick think about. Which feels most familiar to you right now? Which place would you put yourself in right now? And when I say right now, I don't necessarily mean today, depends on when you're listening to this. I mean, thinking back to maybe the last 2 weeks to a month, something like that. That's a good time frame to think about, perhaps around a month, something like that. Do you feel that it's, is your message to yourself, if you like, I'm fine, I'm just busy? Okay, that's fine. My question would be, how long has that been going on for? I'm coping, but I'm tired. Okay, that can also be fine, but how long has that been going on for? Things feel heavier than they used to. Things feel harder than they used to, more challenging than they used to. When you look back to your career 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, do you look at it and think, wow, I really used to sort of enjoy it and get energized and motivated by it. And I can't remember when I last felt like that, for example. Or do you know what? I'm just not sure. I have a different banner up today, but I often have my traffic lights of tolerance banner up, and it's got green, low levels of stress at the bottom. It's got yellow, fight or flight stress in the middle, and then red zone, freeze at the top. And when we've gone through fight or flight, which you'll probably all be familiar with, stress levels increase, we get into the fight or flight response. If we don't manage them, if stress doesn't come down and it keeps going up and up and up, where we get to is freeze. And at that point, there is no energy left to really be feeling anything. And we can get very stuck and really just stop being able to think, to make decisions, all of that sort of thing. So if we're feeling, actually, I just don't know, then it could be that you're right up in that freeze state where there's very low energy at that point, because the body is using its energy to just keep you going, to just keep functioning, the heart beating, a bit of your digestive system going. So, depending on where you might feel in those questions would give me an indication, certainly, as to where you might be on that stress ladder, on that burnout ladder, if you like. So just notice where you think you might be right now, and where you think maybe you've been for the last few weeks, maybe the last month or two. And do, I've said in a couple of these slides, I'd love to know. I do genuinely mean that when I say drop me an email. And I know a lot of people have, when I sent an email out about this session and they said, oh, yes, please, that would be really useful right now, or I love the sound of it. I do genuinely mean it when I say drop me an email, and I will send you an email back. So do, if you see one of these, you see this is true in yourself, drop me an email. Say, do you know what? It feels like that one. That's the one that feels like me. And I feel like it's been like that for 6 months, 2 years. I don't know. Let me know. I do genuinely mean that when I say that. So the myth that we work with, if there was a problem, we'd see it. So either if there was a problem with somebody that I work with or somebody else, I would see it. And if there was a problem with myself, I would know about it. Yes and no. 11 years ago for me, before I realized what chronic stress was, when the panic attack started, which was quite late. That is right at the top of the fight or flight and going into freeze. The body has gone into actual panic. Before that, I was like, oh, I'm a partner. I'm earning more money than I ever thought I was going to. We've just bought our dream house. We've just bought 2 new cars. We're going on the holidays we've always wanted to have. We've got the most beautiful family. I didn't see any of that as a problem. But clearly my body, after about 3 years or so of quite extreme, hard work, long hours, loving it all the time, by the way, absolutely loving the work I was doing, but quite full on for quite a long time. Clearly, my body was starting to show the signs that that was not something that was going to be sustainable. So high performers mask strain exceptionally well. We mask it even from ourselves for a very long period of time. And that's why I think the body is so clever. It starts to kick in. It's the waking up with headaches in the morning. It's the constant stomach aches, digestive issues, pain in the neck, the shoulders, the back. I mean, my chiropractor, even now, is like the tension that still exists across that mid-level of my back. That is something that, you know, obviously has built up over many, many years, and I'm still working on getting rid of now. So the body, again, another good book recommendation for you, The Body Keeps the Score. The body, if the mind doesn't notice it, the body will start to show us these things. So again, these are things to look out for, because high performers, we're used to the long hours. We're used to putting ourselves under extreme pressure of deadlines and saying yes to everything and never not having capacity for something. You know, we've done that for years. That's our normal way of operating. The fascinating question is why, and we might talk about that in a moment. But we do mask it. We mask it from ourselves. We mask it from others. And functioning is not the same as thriving. Functioning, even it looking like it's going really well, is not the same as thriving, because thriving is, are we truly happy with the work-life balance we have, with the work we're doing, with the amount that it's taking from us, etc. Now, sometimes we will be. That's the true balance of life. Sometimes we're giving it far more. Sometimes we need to give other things far more attention, like our own health or our family or whatever it is. The true balance is being able to flow through those different times in those different states. But yeah, ticking all the boxes, it looking brilliant on paper, isn't the same as thriving. And only we know if we feel like we're thriving. And this idea that output hides internal load. So we may be producing so much work, you know, so many chargeable hours, or getting through so many deals, or bringing in so many new clients, or whatever it is. But that may be a really good disguise for everything that's going on internally. So this is the myth, that we think we'd see a problem if there was one. And unless you know how to look for it, and the questions to ask and the things to listen for, the signs in the nervous system, you probably are going to be missing those, whether it's in yourself or in other people. So what other people see on the surface, we are meeting all those deadlines. We are the reliable one. We are the safe pair of hands that everyone will come to. You know, what's that great phrase? You want something done, you ask a busy person to do it. We're holding everything together. And that might be on the work front, that might be work front, home front, because, you know, when you're a bit of a perfectionist and a hard worker at work, you don't leave that at the door. That perfectionism and hard worker, people pleaser, yes person exists at home as well. So you're probably volunteering for everything. You're probably on committees and charities and all these sorts of things as well. But what's going on really underneath? It is that swan paddling like crazy to keep up. There's constant, I say low level pressure there might be constant high level pressure. But even when it's supposed to be downtime, that pressure is still there. It doesn't have the time or the space to go anywhere. So the pressure is still there. There is this persistent tension in the background, always switched on, always on high alert. Even if we're not physically checking our emails or our phone or anything, we're thinking about checking them, because that is the panic response. The panic response is, I must know what's going on at all times. That's the fear response. If I miss something, it'll all come crashing down around me. I'm going to drop one of the hundreds of plates I'm spinning, and then disaster. And that's the fear-based response. So we're always switched on because we're always on high alert. It's like that, I don't know if the advert's still out there, that meerkat advert where the meerkats are sitting up and looking around everywhere for danger. When we're under stress, we're under pressure, and we have been for a while, this idea of not being able to switch off becomes almost a hallmark, because we have to know what's going on all the time. It's too scary not to. And that's how people get to the stage of not being able to switch off at all. So why does this happen? I think I've probably hinted about it in my excitement to talk about it, because I absolutely love these topics and find it so fascinating why the body and the brain do what they do, especially with people like us. The body learns to keep us performing under pressure because it's our safety mechanism. I wasn't going to go into too much brain science with this, but because I love it, any opportunity. At the end of the day, the fight or flight stress response was created when humans were created to keep us alive. And the brain has not evolved any differently since then. So when we go into high stress, panic, fight or flight response, it's the brain's way of saying, I need you to worry about this. I need to keep you safe. I need to keep you alive. So for those of us that are high performing, perfectionist, overachiever, people pleasers, yes people, etc., safe pair of hands, our body and our brain has learned that that's what we must do to keep ourselves safe. At some point, whether in our childhood or in our early careers, probably a mixture of both, because it probably happened in childhood and then the legal career sort of got hold of us and is a perfect breeding ground for this, because it shows us again and again that yes, if you want to stay here, if you want to be successful, if you want to be promoted, if you want to keep your clients, if you want to build your business, you must keep performing at this high level, never make a mistake, always be over delivering, always say you have capacity. All these things become sort of self-drivers, if that makes sense. And the brain starts to believe that's normal and that we need that sense of pressure to stay safe, i.e. to stay alive. The brain starts to think that we will die, we won't survive if we don't keep running at that sort of pace. So this is where the brain is quite clever like that. It's intending to keep us safe, but actually from a health perspective and a performance perspective, because we're not performing particularly high once we've got all that going on. We don't have the bandwidth to. All of this becomes normal, and that's really quite a dangerous place to be in. Sustained pressure becomes our new normal, and we stop noticing, we don't see it. Other people might, who are maybe outside the law, who may be working more normal careers. But for us, it's always been like that. We've probably always worked at a high pace. We've probably always taken on a lot, etc. And maybe for a period of time, for a period of a number of years, when maybe we were younger, maybe we had more energy, maybe we didn't have families or other concerns to worry about, and we could focus all our energy on this real high performance. But over years, the energy for that goes down. The ability to perform at that level all the time goes down. But the body, the system, still believes it needs to do that. Otherwise, it will die. So it keeps telling us that we need to do it. So this isn't about our mindset. This is where a lot of thinking around stress, burnout, boundaries even for lawyers goes so wrong, because it tells us, just create some better boundaries. Lovely. If I could do that and I could do it that quickly, would I not have done it by now? This is this adaptation I'm talking about. The brain believes it's only safe to keep high performing and overperforming. And so we have to work with that. And that's where, even a little realization, listening to some of this today, will start to unlock something for some people. Because next time their brain is telling them, oh my goodness, I must check my emails again. Oh my goodness, it's been 10 minutes and I did not send that email back to that client. If this causes one stop and pause and says, hang on, is that realistic? Is that really in the cold light of day what's expected? Or is that my brain panicking and trying to keep me alive? And actually, I won't die if I don't do that thing right now. My brain can relax. It is safe for me not to do that particular thing right now. It's this work that is really needed to put in place the boundaries and all of those sorts of good things. It's realizing that the brain is doing what the brain thinks it needs to do to keep us alive, but it's got it a little bit wrong. It doesn't need to do this to keep us alive. And actually, it's probably causing us more damage over the long run and actually risking our career more, because at high pressure, high stress, we're far more likely to make a mistake, to get something wrong, to snap at the wrong client, to forget something that really is important. We're far more likely to make those mistakes and get those things wrong under high stress and approaching burnout than we are if our stress levels are low and we are calm. So this is about understanding where our brain is coming from and how we work with it to get to where we want to be. I spent longer on that than I expected to, because it's just my favourite thing to talk about. So it's not one big thing. It can be a build-up of lots of things, a comment that stayed with you longer than it should have done. Maybe it was a little gripe from a client, or a sideways look from a colleague, or something at home, even something that just kept on your mind and kept coming back to you, and maybe it made you feel bad, or lowered your confidence, or something like that. The expectation from someone that you absorbed and just agreed with internally without even questioning its reasonableness, or where's that expectation come from, and the pressure that we just can't switch off from. And we don't often name these things. They might come up in the day to day, but we just absorb it into whatever other stress and pressure we're carrying. And again, this is, I'm giving you little tidbits and ideas of homework, if you like, that you could take away from this. Maybe when one of these things happens to you, and how you can tell that it's happened is that suddenly there's a bit of an emotional reaction. There'll be a sudden, oh, I'm a bit angry, I'm a bit resentful, I'm a bit sad, I'm a bit frightened. There's a sudden, this is what emotions are for, they're so clever. There's a sudden emotional response to the comment or the situation. And I like to think of that as a boundary. Someone's very close to your boundary, or that boundary's been crossed, and that results in that quite strong emotional reaction. So for now, say a little bit of homework or thinking for you to take away. Just notice when those come up. What are those sorts of things? Is it a comment around a certain thing? Is it something that challenges a belief about yourself, or about your work, your capability, your sense of perfectionism or achievement, or what you think is safe? If a client is upset about something, does that then mean that you're going to lose the client? You're going to lose all your clients. Then you'll lose your job. You'll lose your income. You'll lose your home. You'll die. And people laugh when I say that, but that's good, because it means that they can see that that's ridiculous. But the brain thinks that first. That's the brain's first response. But if we can catch it at that moment and think it through and say, do you know what? I'm not going to die. Even if that client is a bit upset, I'm not going to die. And often, actually, an upset client, and dealing with it in the right way, can produce a very grateful and actually a great client relationship. You see? So it's catching these things, and maybe there's a different way to think about them. So a little, again, pause perhaps here for you. What have you been carrying that nobody else sees? They may see it in the sense of you're a bit more irritable. You're a bit less responsive. It's taking you longer to come back to people on things, because either you're carrying too much and you're not physically got the time, or often because as our stress levels increase, we procrastinate more. We don't have the self-confidence and the self-belief to say, right, I'm done with that task now, off you go. We sit on it and we revisit it and we revisit it, not ever getting any better, but feeling a little bit better because we haven't let go of it yet. So where is there something that maybe you're sitting on, you're worrying about? Maybe it's a comment, maybe it's something that somebody has said or done, or a sideways glance, whatever it is. Where are you carrying something that maybe other people aren't seeing? Again, just for you to think about, or just to notice when those things might come up for you. Because what happens over time is that those small things really start to build. So it's one small thought about, oh, disgruntled client, but it's never just one. There'll be another one and another one and another one. And as stress levels increase, there'll be more. And then it becomes normal. These brain patterns become normal for us. I often talk about the brain as, if you think of a field and everybody walks the same track, so there becomes a track. When you go to that field, it's obvious, oh, that's the path that I take, because everybody's worn the path in the same place around the field. And that's what our thought processes are like. Once we start having the same thoughts of, oh, that client's upset with me, that client's angry with me, I didn't do a good enough job on that thing, I've let somebody down, I wasn't quick enough, I'm not as good as Joe Bloggs over there. Whichever thoughts they are, the more we think them, the more habitual they become, and that track becomes embedded, and actually the thought becomes quicker, becomes more frequent, it becomes quicker. The good news is all this can be undone, but that's how it happens. And it becomes part of our identity. This is particularly why I love working with lawyers, because we have such a strong sense of our identity. I mean, it's why I wrote the book, The Authentic Lawyer. It was all about the personality traits that we have that bring us to law. And it really becomes part of our identity. You know, I sat down years ago when I didn't know if I would be able to stay in the law, chronic stress, panic attacks, all that sort of thing. And I thought, I always introduce myself as, hi, Hannah, I'm a lawyer. Like, I don't even know who else I am outside of that. And that, you know, at the time I started to think, I don't want that just to be it. You know, there has to be more to me as a person and who I am and all of that. But it does, because this does become part of our identity and becomes part of, well, this is just how it works. This is just how it is. And that's dangerous as well, because we get stuck in that, and then we get stuck in the same cycles and the same patterns. So this is this shift, if you like, that happens, that shifts from what's actually happening, the circumstance, the issue that's actually happening, to it becoming part of our identity. And that's when I'll hear people whose confidence is going down start saying things like, I'm just not as good as that person. Well, I'm just not a very good technical lawyer. I'm not very good at business development. This has never been my strong point. I know that it's my personality to X, Y, Z. Those are fixed mindset approaches, which happens when we're under a lot of stress and under a lot of pressure. So what's the cost? You've probably guessed from some of the things I've talked about, but the cost of holding it all together. Decision fatigue. We're making micro decisions all day long in our work from the minute we wake up in the morning. But decisions become harder. Even the little decisions like, can I accept this clause? Did I send that email? Did I order something for dinner? Did I do this? Did I book that? Did I pay that bill? All of these are decisions, and they all become harder because we're under so much more pressure. We have much less energy available. So all decisions become harder. We have less clarity. Thinking, where we used to feel that we were sharp, we were quick, you know, it becomes foggier. All a stress reaction and a reducing energy reaction. Very, very predictable. Things feel heavier and harder. And the things that maybe we used to do to give ourselves a boost, to give ourselves more energy, to give ourselves more motivation, we either don't have time to do, we've deprioritized over everything else, or they're not working. Because when we really get into a rut with this, the things that would have worked for us are not enough. They might have been enough to keep us ticking over when things were okay, but when things are even harder, they may not be enough to keep us going. And then that over-checking, that procrastination I talked about, and it's not just procrastination. It's not just spending 3 hours on something when we should really have only spent about 45 minutes on it. It's the erosion of self-confidence and self-esteem and second guessing. And it's often when I start to talk to people at this point, because they say, you know, I think that where I'm working, or my work, or my team, or my firm are, you know, causing me to have all this pressure and all this stress. So I think I need to look at moving, but, you know, I'm not very good, or I don't have a good enough following, or I don't know if I could do that job. So this is like this horrible paradox that we find ourselves in, which is we're not happy where we are, and we may have started to realize that where we are is perhaps not the healthiest place for us. But by the time we do, we are in chronic stress. We are thinking very negatively about things. We catastrophize over everything, and our self-esteem and our self-confidence is through the floor. And so this is, you know, I'd love to work with people before that happens, but this is often where people come to me, and we have to work first on that energy, bringing that up slowly, not too fast, because that'll overload the nervous system too, but bringing that up slowly so that they can have less decision fatigue, more clarity. Things feel that they can make decisions, and they can trust themselves again to make the right decisions for them. It takes time. You can't do it too quickly, because the nervous system will go into panic and shut down and shove you into that freeze that we talked about. So what is perhaps harder for you than it used to be? You know, it used to feel easier. It used to feel maybe even joyful. And you may not have even stopped to think about this, because it might have been 2 years, it might have been 3 years, it might have been 5 years. I only thought about it recently when I changed firms last year. And now I'm going into the office, and all right, yes, it's a new office and it's absolutely beautiful. But even before we moved offices, I remember going into town and just working from the office and then deciding, oh, I'll just go out and buy a sandwich. And I walked out into Manchester and I bought a sandwich in the sunshine and I walked back to the office. And I haven't done that for years. And it was just these little things. I was like, wow, just to go into the office, to go and buy a sandwich and just, I don't know why it seemed like such a thing that I remembered doing years ago and I hadn't done for such a long time. So sometimes we're going back a long way and we forget in the busyness, in the pressure, we forget these things. So maybe there's something there for you as well. It's not about a lack of resilience. I know how people love to say that it is. It's a very good way to blame the individual and not the soup that they are swimming in. The cultural and all the things that have been wrong with the profession for many, 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 many years. It's very easy to say it's an individual's problem, and it is not. You've probably been very resilient for a very long time. That's the truth. But it often cannot go on forever. So what does this look like if we've been very resilient for a very long time? Blurred boundaries. And I know that was the part of the topic that really resonated with a lot of people. As again, stress levels go up when we're at that higher level of the fight or flight, we don't even have the cognitive ability, the mental energy that it takes to put boundaries in place. So we have no boundaries. We say yes to everything, telecoms at 10 o'clock at night just because the client demands them, all these things that we say yes to, and we don't even stop to think whether we have got the capability, the bandwidth, the energy, or any of those things to do it. Over responsibility, carrying that responsibility that is not ours. And, my brain still wants to, even though I've done this work for 10, 11 years now, my brain still wants to go there. And I often joke about it. I had a transaction. I don't do a lot of my own property transactions anymore. I try to give them to the team so I can do more of this great work. But I had a transaction a few months ago and I sent out the completion monies to the other side, as I remember. I sent them out a good time, like 9:30, 10 in the morning. And thought, right, that was it. That was the only thing I actually had to do today, so I can go off and do all my other things. And get a message in the middle of the afternoon saying, where's your completion monies? And do you know the first thought that came to my head? And when I shared this in a talk recently, I had everybody in the room go, that I've sent the money to the wrong place. That's where my brain still goes first, because that's the track. The track has been there for 20 years. So the track is, Hannah, you sent the money to the wrong place. And I was like, hang on. While I'm logging into the system, which takes a bit of time and all of that sort of thing, I'm thinking, but hang on. You had the bank details on a PDF, which you copied and pasted. Your assistant telephone verified them. The accounts team verified them before they were inputted, and the bank accepted them as, they do these days, bank matches, client name, account, all that sort of thing. It all matched. The chances of me sending the money to the wrong place are pretty small, but that's where my brain goes first. But I could at least recognize and actually laugh at myself that that's where it went while I'm logging in. And then actually while I was logging in to go and check the details, I then got the next email that said, oh no, they have arrived, thank you. So that's my example of us carrying over responsibility. We always go to, this is a lawyer thing, I think, we always go to, I messed up. I forgot to tell the client this. I missed this. Now, yes, I'm not saying we are perfect. And sometimes we have got it wrong. And that is very stressful too. But we often take far more responsibility. Another example I would have is when I'm trying to get a client to the end of a deal and it's all very stressful and it's very time pressured. But I've done all I can do. In my transactions, there's at least two parties and I can't force the other party. They have to come along with us. But I will sometimes lie there or sit there at night and think, is there anything else I could do? Is there any, and it's this over responsibility that it's ours to fix. Staying available way long past what's sustainable. I say in my example, sitting up thinking, is there anything else I can do? Absorbing the pressure, stress and expectations of others, particularly if we are in a senior or a leadership role. I was just messaging someone on LinkedIn about this the other day. I was talking about, resilience in teams and all this sort of thing. And she said, you know what, my team is fine because I really look after them, but I look after them at my own expense. And this is what I'm hearing from leaders all the time. I'm the shield for my team. I look after them. You know, I really value my team, so I put everything into them. We're absorbing the pressure, stress, and expectations. And again, that is not sustainable. That cannot go on forever. It won't go on forever. So another little pause. I probably need one because I got, again, all overexcited talking about all that great stuff. Some questions to ask yourself here. What is actually yours to be carrying? You know, what are you carrying over and above? Where are those little things running around in your head that, well, I should have written that blog post. I should have written that article. I should have sent that email to that person, you know? And some of those things, yes, you know, perhaps they need to be done. The vast majority of them don't. It's that perfectionist, high-driven person just feeling that we need to do all these things. What are we carrying that is not ours to carry? And what would enough look like? This is hard concept for lawyers because we are perfectionist, high achievers, overachievers. I joke, but it is the truth. I sat 2 GCSEs a year earlier than I needed to because the school then thought, well, I could do more the next year. I did 5 A levels when I only needed to do 3. You know, I look back and think this is crazy, crazy. But this concept of enough, just no, until I nearly burnt out. And I thought, actually, that's the sustainable way. Sometimes B plus is good enough, and lawyers hate that. What do you mean B plus is good enough? Sometimes it is. Depends what it is. If it's a court document or something, you know, witness statement, maybe we need A plus for that. But we don't need A plus for everything. Where are we giving or trying to give everything A plus effort when actually B or B plus would be enough? So those are some things to think about. Now, if we do work with others and we work in teams, you know, this is really important for everyone. Yes, we carry huge risk, and this is another topic that I talk about separately. You know, we're carrying risk for complaints and mistakes and claims and all of that sort of stuff. And the decisions that people make, that decision quality is going to be dropping. They're going to be making decisions slower. The decisions are not going to be necessarily the right ones. They're risk decisions. Their appetite for risk is going to be wrong if this isn't picked up. And then, of course, yes, we get people leaving. We get people thinking about leaving. We get the phrase that came up in lockdown, quiet quitting. So they haven't actually handed their notice in, but they've decided that they're just not all in anymore, you know? And all of this is not good for profits and not good for team morale and all of that. So early signs worth noting, maybe in ourselves and in other people, because at some point there comes a point where we can't see this in ourselves anymore. As I mentioned, if we're really high up on the fight or flight and tipping into the freeze, this is so normal for us now. The body's being under high stress has become normal. And actually, when you try to bring the stress down, the body goes into panic because it has come addicted to that stress. So some things to look out for. I'm fine, just busy. That's all right if it's for a short period of time. If that has gone on for weeks or months, I know an early mentor of mine always said 3 months. That's quite a long time for this. But if something has been this way for 3 months, that is normal. That is the way that it is now. So I'm fine, just busy. We need to keep an eye on that. How long do you, and I often say this with clients, they say that to me, I'm like, how long do you see this situation existing for? How long has it felt like this? And where do you see it changing? And so long as they can give me an answer to that, then I'll just be holding them accountable to that. You know, are we getting closer to where this situation is going to change? Otherwise, we are talking about this as being our norm. And we need to find solutions or suggestions or ways to cope with this being our norm. If you start to see a slight withdrawal or this sort of irritability in someone who's usually very calm, that's got to be a big red flag. If someone is over-delivering, overdoing, you know, if their chargeable hours have gone up and up and up, it looks good on paper, but it's a red flag. It's a huge red flag. They're doing more, they're repeating things, they're overdoing it because that's where they feel some control and they feel some safety, but it's not sustainable. And then reduced confidence, reduced self-esteem in someone who was previously, you know, really quite confident. Are they avoiding things that they would have done before? Are they trying to stick to a very few defined things instead of stepping out of their comfort zone and things like that? These are all things to look out for. Where maybe if you are a leader or you manage other people, where maybe you are seeing this in other people, please do just be on the lookout for it. So we want to see performance in a different way. It's not just the amount that we produce, not just the output, but how long, how many years can we do this for? And it's not just about physical capacity for taking on another file, another client, another matter, but how much energy do we have and how much clarity, focus, decision-making, quality do we have to bring to the matters we've got? And it's not just about functioning. You know, it's not presenteeism, just turning up, whether we're turning up online or whether we're turning up in person. Are we actually thriving? Do we actually have the energy, the focus, the motivation to do the best job and to step out of our comfort zone and to enjoy it, hopefully? So just before I finish up here, I want to leave you, hopefully, there's been a few things for you to take away. But if anything I've talked about today has hit home, maybe, even a little bit, then it's really worth paying attention to that. And as I say, I really did mean it when I say drop me an email. You know, if there's something where you think, that's me, Hannah, drop me an email. Or if there's something where you think, that sounds a bit like me, but it's not, it doesn't quite look like that, you know, or even, no, this doesn't sound like me at all, you know, anything like that. Really happy to hear those things. One of the things I see most often and is possibly most dangerous is people dismissing this. Although I guess the people who really need to hear this will never listen to it. But they'll tell themselves, I'm fine. They'll say, it's just a busy period. It's part of the job. It's part and parcel of the career. And sometimes that's true for a period of time, a short period of time, a deal, a project, something like that. But sometimes it's something that's been going on for a really long time and has been building quietly and slowly. And when we can notice these things, the easier we can notice them, the easier we can make these little shifts. First of all, just in our brain. That's where it really has to shift first, and then shift in our actions. So for some of you, just having a different way of seeing this is going to be really, really useful. Just hopefully, and I know I've covered quite a lot, I didn't really intend to, but I've just got so excited about sharing this with you. Just notice any of the little things that I've talked about. Don't try and look for all of it, please. Only little steps, I always say to people. So just seeing those, just noticing them, noticing where your boundaries are, or maybe where they're being overstepped, or what you're carrying that maybe is more than you need to be carrying. And that alone is enough to start a little switch in the brain, a little change. And in 3 months or 6 months, there could be things that look quite different for you, which is really exciting. I think is a really exciting place to be. But for others, you might think this is something that actually it really has hit home, and maybe I am a bit further down that scale and it really is it's already starting to be unsustainable. And then you might want to be a bit more intentional and a bit more supported potentially in doing something about that, because you want to keep performing, you know, at your best, but not at a cost to you. So if that's the case and you want a little bit of extra support, I'm not going to talk about these in any detail here, but broadly and very excitingly, I've recently just put together these 2 different pathways to work with me, because people keep asking and I didn't have the answers. So I've put these 2 together. So there's a foundational level, practical tools, some structure, understanding better about how you're operating, what the patterns are about pressure and energy that are going on for you, how to create some more of these clearer boundaries and that sort of thing, then that is there as an option. And then for people who want a bit more sort of personalised, one-to-one, more type support, then we've got the inner circle here to have a look at patterns, barriers and challenges, and to think about how we create lasting change, but I like to think about this as evolving change as well, because this is the work of quite a bit of time. We change one thing, makes things a bit easier, then we start looking at the next thing and the next thing. So this is the idea that there's more consistent and ongoing support and things. So those are there. Absolutely no pressure to do anything with those, but if it would be helpful, if you want to know any more about those, then do give me a shout and I can certainly tell you about those. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening into this. As I say, it's been a bit longer than I expected it to be. And I hope, if nothing else, it gives you a slightly different perspective on what I'm fine actually means, because looking fine should never be the whole picture. We shouldn't just be fine. We've worked too hard for that. It should be a lot better than that, I hope. So, as I said, always so happy to hear from people, whether it's LinkedIn message, whether it's email, whether it's WhatsApp message, all of those are very, very welcome. So think about, have any questions come up for you? Is there anything where you think, actually, you started to talk about this, could you explain a bit more about that? Is there anything that surprised you? Maybe it's been there sitting in the background and your brain has been batting it away. And if there's anything you want to know anything about more, then do let me know as well. But otherwise, thank you so much. And I'd love to hear from you. Take care.